The Indians' first exhibition game against the Pirates in the books, and the Tribe was down 3-0. And hey, exhibition game or not, a rally spark. They take it 5-3. Zach Plesac looks solid. Christian Arroyo comes up big. We'll get to him. But first off, welcome everybody. Indians Baseball Insider Breakdown. I'm John Fanta, joined by Justin Lada. And Justin, your reaction here to the Tribe. It's an exhibition game, and Tito has long said throughout this summer camp, I'm not going off one night. That said, the takeaway in general from this night is that the youth in the Indian system shining with an opportunity.
Yeah, it was the young guys that kind of drove the comeback. I mean, the pitching was good early on, but it was the at-bats by Yu Chang, who's had a great summer so far. Tyler Freeman had a big hit. George Valero worked a big walk. Christian Arroyo, who's battling to make this team. These are all kids who have not been given a chance, or a couple prospects, but they were the ones who sparked that eighth-inning rally, which was really good to see. And I know Kyle Crick, who started the inning for the Pirates, was a major league arm, and he had some control issues, but to see those young kids with that experience level fight back for that rally, that was really interesting to see how that kind of unfolded.
The way this game started, not much action on the board at all. Zach Plesac was the story. He had 6 strikeouts through the first 3 innings, ended up going 5 innings in this game. And Justin, the takeaway here was, one, his off-speed stuff is in a really good place. And Francisco Lindor said after the game that he noticed Zach's changeup has taken a climb. Just playing behind him at short, Frankie said Zach is proving to people that he is ready to be a consistent major league arm, and we could see that strikeout stuff. What did you make of the distribution of pitches from Plesac here?
Yeah, so I think at times last year, I think a lot of people who have watched the team closely, whether they're fans or other writers or covering the team on a day-to-day basis, that Plesac threw, was very fastball heavy in his arsenal last year. And tonight, 37 sliders and changeups combined, and you said the changeup was really impressive. He had 6 swings and misses on the changeup, which is his bread and butter off-speed pitch, but the slider took a leap forward, I thought, too. And for him to dominate the way he did with the off-speed stuff and kind of let the fastball mix in, throwing your secondaries more than your fastball is kind of the en vogue thing now with hitters sitting on fastballs, and Plesac needed that. How many swing and misses did I write down that he had? He had 12 swings and misses, and 11 of them were the slider and change. So he had a 17% swinging strike rate, which is, really good. In his best years, Corey Kluber was looking at between 14 and 15%, which is, obviously really impressive. This is an exhibition game, but for him to work that arsenal in there was really good. The only thing I really noted other than the arsenal was Clevenger and Plesac, I think himself, talked in spring training about a jump in velo for him, that he was going to throw harder just for them working out. And I noticed, I don't know if it was how many spring training starts he got in before things shut down, but I know he was 94, 95 in one of his starts. And tonight he was 92.5 on the fastball. So that's something to look, to watch for, because he was generally, 94, 95 last season. So maybe it's just, the buildup or the adrenaline's not quite there with the fans. That'll be something everybody has to kind of work on maybe. But overall, he was dominant. So was Joe Musgrove for the Pirates. But, man, Plesac looked really, really good. And he had another pickoff, too.
That pickoff move has gone nowhere. That thing has stayed constant. And I'll tell you what, Justin, Zach Plesac was not going to, in one night, just solidify a role in the rotation. That said, what he's done over the course of this summer camp, what he did during spring training, the body of work that we've seen him put together, combined with the fact that he's definitely evolved with his off-speed stuff, that changeup has some real good stuff to it. And you talked about that rise in velo. We'll see that continue to evolve. It would lead one to believe here that based on what we're seeing, Zach Plesac and Aaron Savali have done the best jobs in making their cases to fill out a 5-man rotation. And we know that Terry Francona has alluded to a 6-man rotation with Adam Plutko being the option.
Yeah, Plutko started, through 5 or 6 innings playing the sim game. They left him back in Cleveland. And I noted earlier today, some of the roster cuts they made. So, Logan Allen, Scott Moss are going to head back to Lake County. Tristan McKenzie just threw today. Jeffrey Rodriguez has been unable to throw due to a sore back, so he's out of the equation. So that leaves, the 6 guys right there. I'm trying to think if there's anybody I'm leaving out, but that kind of leaves them. So, and I think Plesac and Savali, if you just kind of listen to the way they've executed and the way they've come back and not missed a beat with this time off. Not that Plutko wasn't doing anything during the break, but I think you can just see, I don't know, it's like, it's hard to look at the results of a simulated game and say, well, he had a great line. But I do think if you just read between the lines a little bit, it does seem like Savali and Plesac have both kind of separated themselves from Plutko. So if they do go with the 5-man rotation, then it's definitely those two. And then, but Plutko is going to have a role regardless.
Here's my question to you, and I want to explore this here. And I think this is kind of an inside baseball type of question, but that's what we're giving you here on Indians Baseball Insider, is an extra layer of perspective. I don't think, personally, covering the team day in and day out right now, I don't think Terry Francona would come out and say this, because he's someone who is so player first, and that's a great thing about the skipper, and that's something that I think people have more than realized in his 8 years at the helm. That said, do you think that the selection of that final 30 changes with a shortened season? And what I mean by that is, are you taking that chance on somebody that might be hot, that you think, I can ride this person, or maybe I think they're more suited for the 60-game atmosphere, more so than I just would, as opposed to going a different mindset on a 162-game?
That's a good question to have to weigh. I'm sure that's going to be talked about when they make their final cuts, and it's going to be talked about when they cut from 30 to 28 and 26 as well. It's going to be really tough. I think initially they'll probably think that, and then once you get down to 28, it'll be more about the final stretch, or the 26, I should say. The 30 is just going to be for depth early on. I'm pretty sure you're just going to be making sure you're covering for any pitchers who might not be ready. The 3-batter minimum rule. Making sure you have pitch runners, extra catching.
I'll jump in and explain a little bit about the question. Terry Francona said before Saturday night's exhibition, I asked him, I said, what's your gauge on Domingo Santana, just where he's at right now? And Tito says, this is a guy that, to me, when he gets hot at the plate, he stays hot. And all that made me think of what we were talking about on Smoke Signals. Not that it was a question that Domingo Santana was going to make the roster. It really wasn't a big question. Projected starting lineup guy. Now, we'll talk about his situation in left field, but it made me think to myself, well, in a 60-game season, we've talked about the fact that Lindor and Ramirez, that's what this team hinges on. But if you get some of those guys who, in the dog days of summer, even though it's going to be the start of this season, July 24th, unheard of, that maybe you do, in your mind, ride that guy who is a little bit hotter, just because that's the sample size that you're working off of here in these unprecedented times.
Yeah, if you think you have a guy who has a chance to make an impact, and you just go with what he can do, if he's a game changer with the way he's going, and you think that, if you're talking about like a Yu Chang or someone younger like that, it might be tougher for pitchers to key in on some of the weaknesses of those hitters early on, because there's just not a lot of time and video to develop that. So you have a little bit of advantage of scouting reports maybe not going around too. Scouts aren't going to be at games initially either, so that factors in too. So you have hitters that might just not have game plans against them that might take advantage of. So, yeah, I think early on, if there's a guy who they think just right away can impact the roster and impact games, they maybe get him on the roster and see what he does. And if he makes an impact, he forces his way into a role, whether it's, a pitcher or a hitter.
Just looking at a couple other points here. What did you take away from Cam Hill?
Cam Hill was good. I was expecting a little bit more. I was really excited to see him, obviously, because this is the first time we've really seen him in a major league game outside of spring training. And most of the broadcasts in spring training don't have velocity. And The camera angles are a little bit off, and tonight was good. Mostly 92, 93, it looked like. I didn't think anything jumped out about his stuff. I mean, he was pretty solid overall. I have seen him throw harder in the past, so that felt like it was a little bit down for me. But I think it's really telling about his roster spot that he got a chance to be on this trip and play in this game tonight. I think they were only going – I mean, I know, George Valera and Tyler Freeman got chances at the end of the game because it still is an exhibition. You're not trying to, pull someone's hamstring by playing 9 innings the first time back against another team. But I do think it's telling that he got a chance in this game. And, with Tito's comments the other day saying it's going to be a real hard decision on his roster spot, whether he makes it or not. So I do think there is a little bit of something to him, at least being on the roster and making an appearance tonight.
I thought Leon looked pretty solid.
Yeah, I think Leon was actually the most impressive of the relievers. Got a couple swings and misses. Wasn't anything outstanding, but I know he had to walk someone and give him a hit. But he was 94, and he was, mostly in control. But of the couple relievers that did come in behind Zach Plesac, I thought his stuff jumped out almost maybe more than anybody else's. And I know he's got a real shot at making the roster.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most concerned, where's the meter on Oliver Perez?
They like him, right? I mean, he's a guy they do trust, so he's going to make it. But
how about this? What's your trust meter 1 to 10? 10 being strong trust.
Outside of the clubhouse, it's got to be below a 5 for me. I mean, Josh Bell absolutely just hit a rocket off him tonight. And Josh Bell's a switch hitter, so it doesn't matter. But I don't know, the 3-batter minimum rule for me and Oliver Perez just screams bad news. I'm really concerned about that. And the at-bats taken against him tonight looked really good for the Pirates. So it's definitely a question mark.
Well, that's an interesting topic. I mean, with Perez and Simber, this is just a fascinating thing with this 3-batter minimum rule, because those are guys that you don't pull into those types of situations with that in mind. That said, again, it's an exhibition game. The Indians hit into 2 hard-hit double plays offensively. So if you're sitting on your couch saying, what's going on with the main lineup? They didn't put up any runs. I would say let's, take a step back. There were some hard-hit balls in this game. They just were a little bit unfortunate. The Tyler Naquin, he hit a frozen rope that if it goes up the middle, you might have runners at the corners, and who knows what could have happened in that inning. I thought overall, I didn't see anybody look like they were way overwhelmed or in the starting lineup, I didn't see anything that was overly concerning. Any takeaways that you saw from guys at the plate in their at-bats?
No, Jose Ramirez's first at-bat was kind of ugly. His swing to strike out on was ugly. I also think it's fair to note that there are a lot of people who think that Joe Musgrove was going to take a huge jump for the Pirates this year. He was a big pitcher in the fantasy community for a breakout this year for the Pirates. So I think it's also fair to note that he might have just as good a year as we think Zach Plesac's going to have for the Indians. So, and I still think the pitchers are a little above in front of the hitters so far in a lot of cases. I think they've had more time to work, and it's a little easier to throw bullpens than it is to hit against the pitcher who, is finally on the mound facing a hitter for the first time. I don't think you could simulate that as a hitter, whereas a pitcher, maybe you have a little more ability to do that, live ABs and things like that, people standing in.
So think a big picture here for the rest of this Pirates exhibition series. Based on the way the rotation aligns, Shane Bieber will throw Sunday. Now, the Tribe is just playing an intra-squad game on Sunday night. On Monday, the Pirates come to Cleveland. That game is on Sports Time Ohio. It will be televised. Don't worry, it will not be blacked out. They were upset about that. That said, Monday night's game, I'm very intrigued because Mike Clevenger is on the rubber and because his last start, he talked about how he was having trouble a little bit just with his full motion. And I think he referred to it, if I'm correct, it was something with his knee. His knee was not buckling in its full motion. Not something that's overly concerning. Terry Francona said it's not something that I think is going to be, hampering him for a while. But Clev did say that's something that he's battling right now, just coming around fully in his motion. it wasn't something that was heavily reported on. It was not something that was heavily reported on. He just referenced it. I'm just curious to see how Clev looks on Monday. He'll get to go up against the Pirates before the Royals. But it bears noting, Bieber, based on the schedule, Bieber's first opponent that he'll see is, in fact, that opener on Friday night.
Right, and Clevenger pitching on Tuesday or Monday obviously keeps him in line with pitching the second game. But do you know I didn't know that before. Do you know which knee we're talking about? We know it's the drive leg or the plant.
I think it was that plant leg. That's what I believe. I had to check in on that again in full transparency here. But Clev has talked about the fact he had the other night just saying he was trying to come around, and I believe it was something with the knee. Got to check back in on that. It wasn't something that struck reporters as, oh, this is a huge issue. Clev seemed to say it's part of the process of me getting to 100%, just feeling out my full motion on the mound, which we know there's a lot of pieces and parts that go into that motion.
It is a complicated delivery, and it's, very contingent on both of his knees because he does have that strong back drive leg that he uses very well and, puts a lot of force in that front leg when he comes through. But I think it's worth noting that it was the plant leg that he had surgery on after that spring training injury. So I'm not saying they're hiding anything, but I'm saying that's something to keep in the back of the mind. If there is any issue going on there, as far as his mechanics are concerned, that is the leg he did have, or the knee he did have surgery on back in February. So something to think about as he pitches Monday night. So we'll get a good tell. But, his mechanics are kind of complicated, but he's just such a good athlete. And I know he worked all offseason on balance because his delivery and a good delivery like his requires so much balance and so much being able to put that force on your back leg and the way he bends it. I am curious to see what happens with that though. And he does have probably the most complicated delivery of all 5 starters. So I guess we'll get a good look to see what happens.
Baseball. I would say baseball in general. I mean, I think he has one of the more complicated deliveries. Definitely one of the more unique ones in the sport.
Yeah, for sure. Marcus Stroman's pretty simple, but I think Marcus Stroman just likes to toy with hitters more than anything. But there's a lot going on with Clevenger. But like I said, he doesn't look it, and people don't give him the credit for this. He is an incredible athlete and can do some crazy things. He has such good balance. But I will be interested. I will be watching that because, that's going to affect his velocity. That's going to affect if he pulls off his breaking pitches, if they are pulling off to the right because he can't plant properly, or if there's some balance issues there and, he's scared to drive off the back leg. But, Clevenger, we know from last year with that upper back injury that he had, he's going to go 100% anyway. It doesn't really matter. You can tell him to take it easy in any situation. It's not going to stop him from going, 110%. Nothing slows him down if he knows he can go out there and do it.
Curious to see who we see out of the bullpen on Monday in the home game. If we see Brad Hand get some work in, and I'm curious to see what lineup they go with there. And it would definitely appear that there's going to be a tough decision or two made in that pen because there's more candidates than probably slots at the end of the day. And then what do they do with Plutko if that is in fact the case, that he would be that option 6 first time around? Do they have him as a 6th man first time around? Or, you think about that. I know it's just crazy, but when you get to the 6th man in your rotation, you will have been through 1/10 of your season.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's important to note because with the Indians, they can't afford not to have as many innings as possible out of Shane Bieber and Mike Clevenger. Those two have to make every start. Those two have to go 6-7 innings to start for them to fully realize the potential of this roster. You cannot shave days off. I mean, maybe you can go 2 starts through with 6. I just don't see that being a thing they do long, maybe even just 1. So it is going to be a hard decision on Plutko.
The one thing is they play 17 games in a row. So maybe the thought is, hey, we're going to get an extra day, in between. Who knows on this situation? I find it funny. Sometimes Clev and Bauer have joked to Tito and said, I don't want 4 days in between. I'd rather have 3 days in between. So we'll see. That's all to be arranged. I think the takeaway, though, is, and Tito's brought this up, look, Justin, we don't know if we're going to get a full baseball season. I mean, we all wish that we did, and maybe we will. Maybe everything's going to go perfect. I'm not going to get into that. What I will say is, if there is one thing to take away from this summer camp, it is that the young guys that have gotten some opportunities here to perform, I've been impressed from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's hard not to. I mean, he talked about – Francona talked about Chang earlier in the week, and the pitchers all, we're talking about Yu Chang being Babe Ruth. You missed out on a Babe Youth joke or something. And then, Christian Arroyo's swing starting to come around. I still think there's a chance both those guys end up on the roster. But, that's impacted by the decisions they make in the outfield as well because they have so many guys to work through there. I'd just be curious to see how that plays out. And then if those two play a lot Monday, I don't know if they will because that's, your real final tune-up for the week. You're going to have scrimmages from there. But I'm really curious to see how they handle that decision Monday. And like you said, the bullpen too. You see Brad Hand. You'll probably see Adam Simber, I would bet. You'd probably see James Karinchak.
That'll be interesting.
I think you just see guys that you're waiting to make decisions on.
Yeah. Hopefully that trio on STO, the televised game Monday, like if we see that trio, that's going to be pretty interesting. If you're an Indians follower, which if you're watching us, you absolutely are, very intrigued to see what those three bring to the table, what Karinchak does. Can he work out some of the command issues that people are questioning about and try to filter that into some efficiency? But the first two things I'm going to do after this are, one, take a look at what exactly the clarification on Clevenger. Maybe get that out or post that either on Twitter or in a future piece here soon to monitor that. And then, two, I might get the pencil out now and start to put together what the 30-man looks like because I think I saw, based on the departures to Lake County to date, I think they're at about 37 right now, 37 guys.
Yeah, the picture's clearer now. It really is going to come down to, the Cam Hills and I mean, Adam Plutko, I think, has to be on the roster regardless because he's out of options. You can't take him off the 40 or the 60 now without losing him anyway. So, that's not going to happen. So he's either going to be here. I don't even know if they can send him to minor league camp. Like if they try to say we're going to send him to minor league camp, doesn't that make him out of options? I guess that's some clarification on that.
Yeah, that might have to be a question if we get to that point with Tito. If we ask that now, which again, I'm going to do this. If we ask, we could make a reference to that, but not with Plutko. We'd have to make a general reference. You're going to get the same. We're not talking about that right now, which is why these are weird times. I mean, I'll say it as the beat guy here for Indians Baseball Insider, and in full transparency, this is my first season doing this. I will say, when you sit on a lot of the availabilities right now, each one gets more and more stressful because you're talking about guys' jobs.
Yeah.
This is the pathway. And 60-game season, 162-game season, whatever you want to call it or not, it's the bigs. And one thing can be said, this coaching staff hasn't had it easy because they've got a couple of different things happening within the roster. One thing before we finish is Jordan Luplow took 3 at-bats on Saturday against Plutko. Everything seems fine. Delino DeShields is not going to be ready for opening day. That's not going to happen. Under different circumstances, maybe we'd be talking differently about him. But with COVID and kind of being behind the 8 ball, my point is when you combine that with the fact that younger guys have performed and have done a pretty good job, it makes it hard, which is a good problem to have. But they're going to have an 11th hour decision here, one would think.
Also on the same note as Plutko, Christian Arroyo also out of options. So when you talk about framing that question in general, that's also something to think about too in his ability to stay on a roster. And it gets even tougher when you get down to the point where they have to reduce to 28 and 26. These are decisions. I think who they keep on the 30 also impacts, who gets there when they have to get down to 26 is you have to think about which guys have staying power and what you're going to do after that.
Well, how about Tito talking about Jeffrey Rodriguez, who's been sent to Lake County? But Tito said Jeffrey Rodriguez is somebody that we believe is going to play a factor for us this season.
Yeah, as long as his back heals. That was something unknown to me, too, until I saw that pop up the other day that he hasn't been able to pitch due to a back issue. And that happened back in spring training, apparently. And he hasn't really been throwing much since spring training was shut down. So I would, for number one, that also pretty much puts him in a bullpen role. That means there's no way he's going to be ready to start. So if they want to make an impact, it's got to be in the bullpen, and we got to find out when he's going to start throwing.
We'll have to find out what that bullpen ends up doing. Because the heavy need, and he's making his way back. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but he's Justin Lada. I'm John Fanta, Indians Baseball Insider breakdown of the Tribe's first exhibition game of 3 with the Pirates. The next one Monday, 7:05 at Progressive Field. And we'll have coverage from Smoke Signals podcast to some post-game Zooms. We got some potential post-game periscopes here once the season gets going. Wi-Fi provided, as long as that all works out. But Justin, anything else coming up on the site that you'd like to talk a little bit about?
Keep following Diamonds in the Rough. I think we finally have. It's been a struggle to get the top 50 prospects nailed down once the final 6 guys were signed from the 2020 draft class. So I think we finally have that nailed down. So that's definitely going to be coming up here within the next 2 weeks, I think. All
right. For Justin Lada, I'm John Fanta. For now, so long. Keep on following Indians Baseball on Insider.com. The Tribe, a winner. And man, does it feel good to say that. It's been a while. An exhibition game, but they take it 5-3. And the young talent, well, you served for the Tribe on Saturday night.